Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com. I'm going to do one more of these today before I have to take my cat to the vet. Oops. Save. That's my list. I keep these lists on text files. So I'm going to do the Led Zeppelin catalog. The discography. It's going to be short and sweet, be easy. So, alright, Coda. I did the song list a few months ago, like past winter, but I could do albums. Coda is a D. It's just leftovers. You didn't even have Traveling Riverside Blues on it, which sucked. It had Hey Hey What Can I Do and Brownie R. I want to say, or it didn't. Bonzo's Mantra. It had a few songs that were sort of interesting, but it just didn't compare. So now we're gonna get into the good stuff. Houses of the Holy. I'm gonna go A. And that might be selling a little short because House of the Holy has, some ways, is a superior record. I don't want to get in trouble with the cover art, the stupid thing with that. But Over the Hills and Far Away, the Rain song. The Rain song I've kind of gone back and forth recently. I mean, it's just, it has, song remains the same, and it has many favorites. But it's, I don't know. I mean, should it be an S tier? You know, come to think about it, I'm going to put it in S. Just because I even love the Crunch. I grew to love the Crunch. It was also the first album I bought, and it's sort of my taste, in effect, was responsible in some ways for my collecting music in more extensive amounts. I was just buying cassette tapes of 80s pop music mostly before this, and then I got introduced to their music, and I wanted to buy a Led Zeppelin album on cassette tape, and this is the one I bought. I don't remember where I bought it. Maybe the only one there. Maybe because it had. I mean, KQRS was playing stuff on it. A lot of the songs on, almost the whole thing on it. But so it's got the Ocean, I believe, right? Yeah, sometimes I get mixed up between Led Zeppelin 4 and that. But Into the Outdoor. I'm gonna give this. Let me give it a B. The best stuff is really good on it. You know, between I'm Gonna Crawl, Carousel Alhambra, very proggy. I know that John Paul Jones had a larger influence a lot of the music on this album, which a lot of the classic Zepp heads aren't as in favor of. But I like the experiments they did with them. In the Evening, Southbound Soiree. Fool in the Rain, I've gotten a little burnt out on, but I still like the solo on it, and the little synthesizer, which sounds like a trumpet, and All of My Love as well. I'm thinking of All of My Love as the synthesizer solo, and Fool in the Rain just has that little guitar thing that the Page does. It's great. I mean, they're the radio songs that classic rock has overplayed, but I don't find they've been overplayed as much as some of the others. Led Zeppelin 3, I think that also belongs in B, in that it doesn't quite go as far as some of the records to me, but the best stuff is still really good, and it's almost without a bad track. I mean, Zeppelin's catalog is very consistent to me. Most of the records, I don't feel like skipping many, if any, songs from this, including Zeppelin 3. Tangerine, That's the Way. Of course, Out on the Tiles is one of the most underrated tracks on here. Everyone knows Immigrant Song. It's a great riff, but most of the album isn't like that. Of course, most of it's more acoustic-y. Celebration Day, Friends. It's a grower. It's one of those records where you first listen to it and you're like, it's okay, and then you go back to it and you start to appreciate it more. I think they wrote it on the road too, which is more interesting. That's why a lot of it's more acoustic-y. Led Zeppelin 2. Oh man, this is tough. It's on the strength of its best songs are so damn good, I'm going to give it an A. Ramble On is an absolute banger, total banger, and Bring It On Home. I didn't listen to that song for the first 6 months I had this album on cassette tape because I thought it was just some slow ballad, it was stupid, and then totally was wrong about that. The guitar riff. I mean, I talked about this in the songs list last year when I did that or whenever it was. I appreciate Heartbreaker. It's a little bit overplayed. Living, Loving, Made. Whole Lot of Love is maybe the one song especially I've burnt out on. But the other songs that have been played by classic rock radio, I'm not as sick. What Is and What Should Never Be is a terrific track. I've always loved that song. Anyway, Zeppelin 1. I used to at one point feel like this was my favorite Zeppelin album. But, it comes down to it, it's a little more spotty than even Zeppelin 2, and I'm going to give this a B. You Shook Me, I'm kind of sick of. But, how many more times I've always loved, and, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, I love the Spanish guitar on that, and Dazed and Confused, well, in some ways the live extended version, especially on Song Remains the Same, is the definitive version of that, the 32-minute whatever. It's not. I don't look at that track as compared to some other songs, and it's one of the first. It's not metal, but in some ways one of the earliest heavy songs in rock and roll, heavy blues. Your Time Is Gonna Come, Good Times, Bad Times, Communication Breakdown. I'm not as warm. I'm not as crazy about, but anyway, that's why I don't love it quite as much as some of their others. But again, splitting hairs. Zeppelin 4. This is a tough one because I have really burnt out on, the last decade especially, decade and change. But the songs I have not burnt out on it, I still do like, so I'm going to give it a B. It's a really light or low B. Like, I'd put it below, especially Zeppelin 3, I probably would put it below these other two in some ways, because Black Dog and Rock and Roll, I don't need to hear again, and I constantly am bombarded to hear them, unfortunately. But you take a lot of the other songs, Stairway to Heaven, by comparison, while it's a cliche in their trademark song, I still love. The guitar solo is epic, and it's trademark, and I don't mind hearing it still, even after listening to it over 30 years. Four Sticks I love. Going to California is nice. When the Levee Breaks, I'm sort of lukewarm on. I used to love it when I first got into them. And Misty Mountain Hop. Those two I don't dislike as much as I've grown to dislike Black Dog and Rock and Roll. That's kind of why there's too many songs that are weaker to me that I've burnt out on. But the best songs are still damn good that it's slightly above a C tier. But you're on that skating the lines. Physical Graffiti is a stone cold, absolutely definitive classic and their finest work. Maybe based partially to do with, because it's a double album, it's like two Zeppelin albums in one. And I also think they were just being even more creative in some ways, at that point. Oh my God, so many songs on that album. In the Light, The Rover, Down by the Seaside. I love the bridge solo. 10 Years Gone, I get goosebumps every time in that guitar solo. Trampled Underfoot, even though it's been played on radio some. Kashmir I've burned down on a little bit. I feel like Kevin Gilbert reinvented that song, and his version's a more superior version. But In My Time of Dying, unbelievable. The riff in that is just crazy great. Custard Pie. Custard Pie I loved when I initially listened to this record. I love this album so much I have the guitar tablature and the tablature for all the instruments. No, Physical Graffiti, as much as Zeppelin's catalog is very consistently great, it to me is where they peaked, and it's their finest work. Presence, on the flip side, is probably their least consistent record, although I still like a lot of it, and ironically, it has my favorite and my number one song when I did that list last year. Was it earlier this year? I can't remember when I did that list. Achilles' Last Stand. It's also got a song that radio played some, but I still like Nobody's Fault But Mine. Some of the other, deeper tracks I haven't spent that much time listening to over the years, but I've never been, like, We're Gonna Groove. It's got some moments, but A Candy Store Rock is, I never got, I like some of the weirder tracks on, like, Calls of the Holy more than that album, so that's why it goes in B, I guess, but, could this go in C and Zeppelin 4 go in C? Maybe. I don't know. I'm like, I guess I'm partial because they were the first real rock band I loved. Huey Lewis, The News. I liked some other bands in the 80s when I was growing up, but Duran Duran, a little bit here and there. I like Michael Jackson, Prince, and a lot of 80s pop, Roxette a bit, but I didn't really embrace and love and have to get every record from any of those bands. But Zeppelin I did, and that was in 1990, 91. So this is kind of how I have sort of a very sentimental, nostalgic spot for their music, even though I don't listen to it nearly as much. But, every now and then when I hear one of their songs, or, I'll want to put some of their songs, I'm still, especially some of the songs on some of these records, or hear a cover or something like that, I still get goosebumps. Their music holds up to me. It doesn't sound purely dated, unlike some artists. But then again, I love 70s music. So how do you rate the Led Zeppelin catalog? You put Zeppelin 4 as essential, S tier. It's their most well-known, of course. Do you see their catalog as very consistent? I know that there's a lot of people have differing opinions. Well, Zeppelin 4 is probably their most popular album because it has Stairway to Heaven, of course. And Black Dog and Rock and Roll, the songs that radio played the most. Zeppelin is one of those bands, though. I think that a lot of their fans have they don't have an absolute definitive favorite, like unlike some bands. So that's what kind of the beauty of their catalog to me, in that a little bit like Rush, where you go from album to album to album, even though they don't have that big of a catalog, and there's reason you could see why someone would pick a certain album as their favorite. Even In Through the Outdoor. The only one would be Coda, because again, Coda was just stuff that weren't good enough to cut it on the original albums or whatever. So, but anyway, thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and we'll see you next time.